So there can be no question that there are criminal cartels and syndicates, tenderpreneurs, that this whole criminality is driven by profit. People get killed. Even Diokarano got killed.
Yes,
Papita Diokarano.
unfortunately.
She got killed simply because some comrades wanted to make a buck. A lot of the people, Cindy Somagaka, died killed by top ANC leaders.
So perhaps let's educate the public in terms of what is the difference between this commission and ad hoc committee, and why we would state that the ad hoc committee has a greater power.
So this is the key difference in these issues. When you call a commission, the commission has to make non-binding recommendations to the state president, and the president takes it and says, oh, this is cute advice. This is very nice. I mean, I didn't know Nhlanhla is so clever. And he puts them there and he does nothing about it. So he himself is implicated in these very same cartels. These are his comrades. His political bodyguards are implicated in Bosasa. They are implicated all over. And some of the people who are implicated are his relatives. When you look at how people like Judge Hlope lost office, how people like Mkhwanazi lost office, it was ad hoc committees like this one that was seen.
Like who carries the burden of the political implications that are resultant of what is taking place right now?
It is us as the voters who vote for these and put them in office. We put on them a cloak. That cloak is like the sheepskin on a wolf, cloak of the organization of Oliver Tambo. You put it on top of a thief and pray that this thief, once he's got this cloak, his inherent nature is going to change.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the EFF Podcast. My name is Lebohang Mujapilu, and I'm your host today. Today, I'm joined by Sandile Swana, who is a political and governance analyst. We are here to discuss the Nhlanhla Commission and the currently ongoing parliamentary ad hoc committee into the allegations made by Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi surrounding the disbandment of the Political Killings Task Team and the infiltration of our policing judicial systems by criminal syndicates backed up by political leaders. A lot has happened, and we are ready to unpack what has happened so far and what it means for us as South Africans. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, we're just going to go straight into it. We are actually getting news now that Lieutenant Shadrack Sibia, the SAPS, has arrived at his home to arrest him. At the same time, SIU has arrived at Hangwani Maumela's home, who was involved in the Tembisa Hospital scandal of over 2 billion rand being stolen from the hospital and the system. Are these the domino effects that we're seeing of Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi's allegations from his press conference in July 2025?
Oh, thank you. Yes, partly yes, in the sense that the matters affecting Shadrack Sibia is actually obstruction of the course of justice. So that definitely is triggered by Mkhwanazi or the issues that were cooking that led to the press conference. But we also know that these interference with the police work was also driven by economic cartels, cartels that wanted to steal money from the state in one way or another. And it so happened that Tembisa Hospital and this Maumela fellow is regarded as being a big part of these cartels. And from that point of view, the SIU would have played a big role in getting the assets attached. So that is basically, I've said it before, that by taking the records of the SAPS, the records of the SIU and the Auditor General, you could actually arrest a lot of the people who underlie the testimonies at the Nhlanhla Commission and at the ad hoc committee. So that information is with our institutions already.
Okay. So do you believe then that General Mkhwanazi was correct in saying that because of the links to certain political leaders, Shadrack Spear did say that he was getting his direction from Minister Sinzo Mchunu, who has been linked to other criminals such as Vusumuzi Cat Matlala, that there are indeed links with political leaders that have been limiting the processes and police work to be done in order to create safety in South Africa.
Yes, at the apex of this, we must remember that very recently, perhaps in the past 5 days, the Secretary General of the African National Congress, which has been in power for a long time in South Africa, admitted that there are cartels that operate from within the African National Congress. So those cartels would then want to sponsor political persons and deployees into various positions within the police, SAPS, the intelligence, NPA, and then within the procurement structures of the state. So there can be no question that there are criminal cartels and syndicates, tenderpreneurs, that this whole criminality is driven by profit. People get killed. Even Diokarano got killed.
Yes,
Babita Diokare.
unfortunately.
She got killed simply because some comrades wanted to make a buck. A lot of the people, Cindy Somagaqa, died, killed by top ANC leaders, simply because some comrades wanted to make a buck. And this has been a case for a very long time. We'll remember that Jackie Lebi testified that a well-known mafioso, member of the criminal underworld, Aklioti at the time, that this was his friend, Finish and Clark. So a lot of senior comrades are being sponsored by the mafia in South Africa. And Juven Hange, Professor Juven Hange of the University of Northwest in Potchefstroom, actually confirmed that the South Africa is actually now a mafia state. So we are running a mafia state where the decisions of the state, decisions of state officials, decisions of ministers, decisions of DGs, decisions of premiers, mayors, and so on, cannot be distinguished from the decisions of the organized crime syndicates that operate in South Africa, and some operate from the base of the African National Congress.
That is very interesting that you mentioned that, because yesterday we did hear in the Parliamentary Ad hoc Committee where Mkhwanazi was testifying that he can trace this infiltration of law enforcement from the politicization of the ANC all the way back into 2007 Polokwane conference of the ANC. So we are actually saying, do you agree that then that these reflections of rot go back that long ago?
Well, my information as to the infiltration of the criminal infiltration of the ANC and eventually SAPS. For instance, in the case of Jackie Lebi, it started in the early 1990s. So when the comrades were coming back from exile without money, these mafia personalities would then befriend the comrades who were very short of money. I mean, some of these people you see driving Bentleys and so on, they came from exile with plastic bags. Their whole balance sheet was in a plastic bag. They had nothing more than that. And today they live in 6-meter fenced mansion. The fence alone is 6 meters high, and so on and so forth. And a lot of it is stolen money. So remember that Jackie Lebi became the head of the South African police and also the first African head of Interpol, a person already captured by the criminal underworld. The comrades, in terms of interfering with prosecutions and criminal investigations, the case that has just been won against Ramaphosa very recently, that actually they prevented the prosecution of the people who were identified for prosecution by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So political influence has been used for quite a long time to obstruct justice in South Africa, even when all the grounds do exist for justice to be fully implemented. And the base of all that criminality has been the African National Congress.
So you are tracing it back to the lack of what we have considered a lack of political will to bring to justice those who were found guilty within the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and perhaps even the process of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, that the obstruction of justice was already in existence then. So are we saying that there has not been an adequate measure of justice, policing, and safety and security in South Africa since then, due to this infiltration already starting within the early 90s?
Yes, there are people, some of them are in the Democratic Alliance, some are in the African National Congress, who made a decision that they must not be prosecuted and that they are going to use state power, that they must not be prosecuted. So there are many families today who lost their relatives to the ANC in exile, others inside the country. For instance, in the Utenake area, Gqeberha, that broader area, that side, members of AZAPO and so on were being killed by quote-unquote ANC members or members of the UDF and so on and so forth. Others went to exile and were made to disappear by the ANC under the auspices of the ANC and the Askaris and so on. So on both sides of the equation, there are members of the National Party who did not want prosecutions to continue after 1994. And members of the ANC today who occupy very senior positions in South Africa, who have literal skeletons in the cupboard, who don't want prosecutions to continue. So the idea of cover-up, we have seen it in the outcomes of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We've seen it in the arms deal, where Mbeki and Zuma, working together, by the way, sought to run a bogus commission of inquiry, which was later declared by the courts that we must think that it never happened, that there was no such a thing, because it was bogus. In the same way that today we see Zondo wasting our time. I attended diligently at the Zondo Commission, and that's why I'm not interested in this
Nhlanhla Commission. I mean, we're about to get there.
I attended very diligently with all these TV stations and all this type of thing. And what did we get out of it? Nothing.
Nothing.
And another nothing is now being prepared because the elites, both the Broederbond, the National Party, which are embedded in the DA, and the ANC, are together in this to say that people who've committed crimes against the people of South Africa and who continue to do so, especially more recently, economic crimes, because the murders are actually in pursuit of economic crime, profit. So that is the problem that we are facing. Mkhwanazi is not a historian, he's an investigator. So he has investigated up to the year 2007, and I support that he's telling the truth. It's accurate. We also know about that. We've known about that for some time. But it goes back.
This is very scary, I think, to think about, because I think a lot of people are excited to have General Mkhwanazi speak up. I think a lot of people are finally finding expression for the lack of public safety they experience, the lack of active policing in South Africa, but also the lack of accountability that has taken place over the years. And you're speaking about the commissions. But also I think there is that reservation of people having watched commissions. And so you believe that this commission, Nhlanhla, which has been commissioned by the presidency, is another effortless mission. How about the ad hoc committee currently taking place in Parliament? Is there hope within that committee that something's going to happen?
Before this work of Nhlanhla and them started, I stated my own proposal.
Okay.
My own proposal was that the investigation must be done by the SIU. Okay. It's there, it's got the budget, they've got the experience, they are flowing already. They can do it, and the law permits them to do it. Secondly, the people who are implicated, such as Shadrack Sibiya, every day in every organization, whether it's Anglo-American, Sasol, Pick and Pay, whichever organization you can think of, somebody is conducting a misconduct somewhere and is processed without calling any commission. So the HR processes of the NPA, HR processes of the police, and so on and so forth, must be tested, deployed and tested to see if they are actually working to discipline errant police officers, including generals, and then charging them through the police, through the normal process of charging. People get charged. And there are many generals who are already facing criminal charges as we speak today. So that was my second suggestion, that even the Public Service Commission must oversee this to make sure that the HR processes of the state are robust and they are being applied across the board upon all affected individuals. So then the last one would have been, obviously there may be others, but I suggested the three. The last one I suggested was the ad hoc committee. Because it is something that is how Parliament works in the normal course of business. Now, what I'm against is when something comes up, it's like now you hear Cyril saying there's going to be a war room about this, there's going to be an interministerial joint, this, that, and the other. Not testing the well-designed systems that are within our legislation to actually do their job. ESCOM, for instance, should do its job without interference from anybody. You need to test that system and perfect it and make sure it is working properly. The police, the same. Otherwise, we don't build a maturing state because we're always taking work outside of the normal processes of the state. And this Nhlanhla Commission would have been that. And the powers of the ad hoc committee exceed, I want to believe, those of this Nhlanhla Commission.
I think let's just take a pause there. Perhaps maybe let's explain to the public what the difference is. Because I think because there are political parties involved and there is people have different feelings around certain politicians or parties, and ideas around them that perhaps they're not, do not have a good understanding of what an ad hoc committee in Parliament has and what kind of powers they have when they set this kind of thing up, as opposed to something like the commission, which can seem more impartial because it is a group of what they consider to be independent people. So perhaps let's educate the public in terms of what is the difference between this commission and ad hoc committee and why we would state that the ad hoc committee has a greater power in this sense of doing something about the situation we find ourselves in.
Maybe we must look at some of the problems that happened earlier.
Okay.
So some of the comrades, like Comrade Zuma and others, the public protector would come forward with findings and instructions, what must be done. And then the comrades would say those, whatever the public protector has written is non-binding. So I can read it and take it as good advice and then continue with what I was doing. Until the court clarified that actually you have an obligation to implement what the public protector says you must do. So this is the key difference in these issues. When you call a commission, the commission has to make non-binding recommendations to the president, to the state president. And the president takes it and says, oh, this is cute advice. This is very nice. I mean, I didn't know Nhlanhla is so clever. And he's looking at this thing and like he did with Zondo, and Zondo is a very bright guy.
Yes.
And I think he produced volumes that this guy is well educated. If he can produce these volumes and he puts them there and he does nothing about it. Because the president himself, you remember that he bought this presidency. It was bought for him by big business, the billionaires and the multimillionaires. It's a presidency. Helen Zille has confirmed that. Many people have confirmed that. Now, this was purchased, right? So he himself is implicated in these very same cartels. These are his comrades. His political bodyguards are implicated in Bosasa. They are implicated all over. And some of the people who are implicated are his relatives.
Yes, indeed.
In these cases. And so on and so on. But the report from Nhlanhla is going to go to the same culprit with non-binding recommendations as to what he must do. When you look at how people like Judge Hlophe lost office, how people like Mkhwanazi lost office. It was ad hoc committees like this one that was seen. They make binding and enforceable decisions after an investigation. You may not like what they've done, but you can lose your job, right? They can fire even the most well-protected person through that process. Now, the members of parliament are, if you answer to the members of parliament, you are actually answering directly to the citizens.
Indeed.
It's a process of indirect representation. It's just that not all of us can fit into that room where the inquiry is being held. So we voted for people to go and represent us and ask questions on our behalf. So any person who is in that committee is actually a proper member of parliament. Being a proper member of parliament means you've got names that voted for you to be there, right? So if I were to remember which party I had voted for, and I see how they are behaving there, I can write an email or a WhatsApp the same day directly to that party or to that member of parliament to say, I don't think you're doing, or can you please add this? Can you? Because they are representing us. And that is a job that they've got themselves to take extremely seriously. They are not subordinates of Ramaphosa.
No.
They are not subordinates of the cabinet. You see these cabinet ministers with 4 cars, 5 cars, and big bodyguards. They are not everybody's boss. They are not a boss of the judiciary. They are not a boss of parliament. They are just a boss of the executive. So this is the importance of this. We are hoping that a Soviet, Nhlanhla, as he chairs that committee and his members, is taking his parliamentary membership and our votes very seriously. And the people who need to be put through an assortment of disciplinary processes, including termination of cabinet ministers, such as Senzo Mchunu, etc., is going to be effected through a parliamentary process. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you very much for that clarification. I want to go back to when we start this process of the ad hoc committee. I mean, the beginning of General Mkhwanazi's testimony in Parliament. There is something that happens where his statement is supposed to be presented to the ad hoc committee, and then from that is an oath. And there's a particular protocol that is supposed to happen with his statement.
It must be presented under oath.
Under oath. Yeah. And then people begin the process of asking questions and getting to the bottom of everything. There was a problem with that because these protocols were not being followed properly. And there was a problem with the evidence leader as well in this moment. And CIC Julius Malema was very adamant about following certain protocol. And it comes out, especially particularly in the media and in a lot of places, as if there was a reluctance from Mkhwanazi to appear, or there was a delay in processes. However, I just also want to go to the fact that the same people within the ad hoc committee represent the political parties you have mentioned, the DA and the ANC.
And us.
Who have been implicated. And you have stated yourself are implicated in the way the system of policing and justice and criminality has worked. Do you think that the ways in which the ad hoc committee was being run at that moment and not sticking to protocol was an attempt to sabotage it? Or is it that we have people in parliament who are simply not efficient enough and qualified enough or knowledgeable enough to be running this process in this moment?
So first of all, let us accept that the objections were valid. It was not a mischief of delaying this, that the objections were valid. The statement had to be in its cover pages and titles and everything addressed to the ad hoc committee for the first time.
Yes.
And not as if it was taken from somewhere. And then be presented for the first time as a statement of truth under oath by Mkhwanazi, led by the evidence leader. Now, a culture has developed over time. And Mandela was aware of these dangers. And Thabo Mbeki to a certain degree. where standards keep dropping. Mandela was aware in 1995 that there are people who were already representing the ANC in government who were not supposed to be there, who were actually jeopardizing the revolution because they lack discipline, they lack the professional ethics, and so on and so forth. So there are people who survived since 1994 until now, slipping through the cracks, doing sloppy work, dodging, taking shortcuts, and earning big salaries and increasing salaries every year. So I would attribute the problems that were actually happening there to the lowering of standards over a long period of time. There are people who think that all of us must accept anything. Even if we know the standards, we are being forced to accept any arbitrary thing that any lazy person wants to put. We must not even say these people are stupid. They are not stupid. They have accustomed themselves to low standards and lowering standards all the time. It is not yet time to say that they were sabotaging this particular process like they sabotaged the others that we've mentioned in the show. It will emerge because we already know that some of them have already, in a sense, absented themselves. Let's not say recused themselves, but announced that they will be absent because they are somehow, Kola Barnett of the DA, implicated in the whole thing, and so on and so forth. So I think that there are different representatives. Some of them may be even in the ANC. Some may be even in the DA who want a return to high standards.
Okay. Thank you very much. I want to go then, if the ad hoc committee is to be successful and the Nhlanhla Commission is to also finish and go into whatever findings happen, what happens if the findings are different? What happens if the results of each endeavor come out to be different?
I don't think we have to worry about the Nhlanhla Commission.
Okay.
Because it makes non-binding recommendations. It's non-binding. It's just there. These ones in the ad hoc committee, whatever they determine, must follow the parliamentary process and be voted on. The only thing you can query is the decision-making process of parliament, because the decision is made by voting. So what can happen is that using dishonest methods, the DA and the ANC can partner like they partnered with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And I'm saying this because the members of the Broederbond and the National Party are in the DA. That's the reason why I'm saying that. The DA is not the DP, the Liberal DP, which was a 2% party. The DA is not that. It's a different entity altogether. So they can connive in the manner that they've connived to suppress the findings and the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation once the law permitted them and instructed them to actually prosecute. So they can vote like they blocked the impeachment of Ramaphosa and did all sorts of things.
Indeed, after Phala Phala.
Yes. So they can connive and connive and connive. But that is, unfortunately, the process we voted for, that it will be like that. But it will reach a conclusion. Whether we like the conclusion or not is another matter, because the decision-making process is a voting process.
Is the voting process. Are we, as General Mkhwanazi testifies more, and I think we'll get to the provision of evidence and a lot of those things. I mean, already there's a lot of politicians that have been implicated. Do you think he is going to eventually mention the president in his evidence, or is he going to come up in the ad hoc committee or the Nhlanhla Commission, do you think?
The name might come up. Remember that in an inquiry such as this one, you follow the evidence.
Indeed.
You're right? You don't say something just came up into my head now.
No.
To mention Lebo or to mention any other person. No. You must stick to the evidence that is already there. So there may be processes that directly happened where a certain report or a certain alarm was sounded to the president. If there is evidence of that, then it will go there. But it can't go there because I heard from some of the journalists, and I don't know how they based that the MK party was pushing Mkhwanazi to implicate or to mention Cyril Ramaphosa in the discourse. But you cannot mention a person when his name is not in the evidence.
Indeed. Okay, so do you think that the evidence will lead us to Ramaphosa?
I cannot say so, but there are other things, such as, for instance, can a very serious matter like the political
killings
task team be shut down without the knowledge of the president? And if he knew it, why did he think it was right to shut it down? And if he now thinks differently, what happened? What made him to think differently now? So there are questions that you and I as citizens have, but I do not know if those questions are clear in the evidence.
So this would be perhaps our job and your job as an analyst, because it is indeed the president. The crime intelligence is under the presidency, so indeed there are things that cannot take place without his knowledge. And the fact that his own minister of police is implicated highlights strongly that he is aware of very many things that took place within the ministry. And as much as, I think General Mkhwanazi would like the evidence to speak for itself and perhaps not be the one to directly mention it.
Okay. You know the sad thing about this. Let's say now this whole thing in its title is about political killings, because that's where the whole thing started.
Yeah, that's where it begins, yes.
We were not happy that people could be killed for their political views in South Africa. When we were students, people like Dave Webster were killed. When we were students, many student activists were killed. Even they were killed for holding. You kill a teacher at a university, a guy whose job is to hold chalk and present slides, and you say he's a threat to state security, and you kill him. Political killings were there. We were there when they were happening, and we're campaigning that it must stop. Ramaphosa would have been part of those campaigns that political killings must be stopped. So when somebody says a task force that is actually stopping political killings now that they've happened when they should not have happened at all in the democratic dispensation, you, as one of the people who lost your own comrades unfairly because of their views. Steve Biko was not a violent person in terms of carrying arms. If Mandela had been killed, it wouldn't be a problem because he was carrying arms himself.
Yes, and he was pro-violence. He was pro...
He was a soldier. He was pro-violence himself. Steve Biko was not, but he was killed. So Ramaphosa politically could not have actually agreed to, number one, any political killing. Number two, to the stopping of this task from continuing its work. So those are the bigger political questions that must still be answered in Parliament and be answered in the media, answered in the universities in South Africa. It can't be that they must wash it down like they did with the Zondo Commission.
So I think this is where perhaps there is a lot of tension taking place, because General Mkhwanazi is appearing as a policeman who says, my job is to maintain the law. And when I see that the law is not being maintained, that is where I come in. And he's expressed, very like, I'm not a politician and I wouldn't know how to resolve this politically. And then on the other hand, there are the political implications of this is quite phenomenal. So even though he is presenting evidence of this is an infiltration, my task team was disbanded and I was doing good, we were doing good work, and this is the kind of work that we want to do. And that is the role of policing. At the same time, we are going to be left with, and are already left with, so many political implications of what he has stated. And how are we going to pick up these pieces? where do we go from here? What do the citizens of this country have left when we are saying that we are infiltrated, we have been infiltrated this whole time, but our political system remains the same? Are we just voting new people in, or where, like, who carries the the burden of the political implications that are resultant of what is taking place right now?
The political implications are carried by the voter, right? A lot of us in the communities, in the villages, in the townships, in the professions, know very well that the people we are voting, individually and collectively as a unit, are criminals, right? I visited some years ago my dad. They were staying in Umtata at the time, a suburb of Port Gate. They were talking, and then in the award, they had voted a little Tsotsi there, who was his neighbor, a known Tsotsi. So it is us as the voters who vote for these Tsotsis and put them in office. And then we put on them a cloak. That cloak is like the sheepskin on a wolf. The cloak of the organization of Oliver Tambo. You put it on top of a thief and pray that this thief, once he's got this cloak, his inherent nature is going to change. So these criminals, if you meet comrades today, and I do even myself get phone calls, people wanting to cook tenders, right? Because we love money. You say, I can see what I can do. And you know these guys are not discussing proper politics when they meet. They are discussing how to steal money from the state. We know that, but we vote for them. I mean, before coming here, I was analyzing the electoral prospects in Johannesburg. There is nobody who owns more wards than the ANC. No one even comes close, the actual wards. And these ward councillors are the ones who are stealing the municipality blind, and they win elections. The ANC wins wards. The other parties are winning proportional votes, proportional representation.
Indeed.
The people who've got the wards is the ANC by far, and then following at half the number is the DA. So these people who are actually controlling the crime and the criminals, and who are actually the criminals, are voted in by us. I am not in parliament because I've not been voted in by anyone. Therefore, I cannot even commit these crimes that these guys are committing because I've not been voted in. The people who are able to commit these crimes are the ones who have been voted in, but voted in by who? So what is the political implication? It means in 2026, next year, the people and the parties implicated by Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, those parties, you cannot vote for those parties. In 2029, you cannot vote for those parties if you want this thing to stop. You cannot be attending funerals because people are being killed politically.
Because of money.
Because of money. And then we are busy crying there and we are asking for donations, this and our prayers, and we don't sleep Sambi Milindelo because you are sponsoring this thing with your vote. It must stop. So the citizens cannot distance themselves. A person drives a 7 Series BMW as a minister or a member of parliament because you voted. That guy was just a normal thug in the township. You voted him in. Now he's a big shot and you are even afraid of him yourself. And you voted him in to go and commit crimes at the highest level. So this infiltration, the facilitation of the infiltration is actually done by the voters. Let me be clear. When I was in primary school, there are guys, I was fortunate that some of the guys I went to primary school with, I went to the same high school with, some of them. They were crooks in primary school, they were crooks in high school, they're still crooks today.
Crooks now.
So we cannot say that We don't know who
what's
the crooks
going on.
are.
Mm-hmm.
These crooks that are being voted in, they are being voted in by people who know them. Kurt Matlala, if you ask guys who grew up with him, they will tell you who he is. Mkhunu, they will tell you what he is and who he is. Natim Tetwa, they will tell you what kind of guy is this.
Mm. The public, wow, that was very powerful. And I think, do you think that something really has happened to voters though? What we have been groomed into from the beginning, what we when we look at the level where corruption has infiltrated just on the way down to municipalities, what the kind of system that we also have been groomed to in terms of maybe even the conspicuous consumption that we see that people within politics and people within levels of power are able to, enjoy and accrue themselves. And we are living in a world that is highly, incredibly unequal. And that the easiest path to a certain level of comfort in life has become corruption, stealing, theft, that to a certain level, people have just really been groomed not to look at criminality so terribly because, one day when they get a chance to be there, they're going to do the same thing simply because of the extreme levels of poverty and inequality they've experienced.
Let me start like this. I was reading a book about my own people in the Eastern Cape, Mbondoland.
Mm-hmm.
The book is titled Fago. Fago was the king of the Mbondo people during the time of Shaka Zulu, Mushweshwe and so on, during that period. And now this fellow, the writer, Stapleton writes in passing about this, that the records that show the pre-colonial economic position of the Africans in Mbondoland, which is the eastern part of the Eastern Cape, closer to the Zulu, to the KZN border. He said, on average, in one homestead, there would be 20 to 40 huts. 20 to 40. Now, if you know how to do your maths, you'll realize that one household was a massive, it was like a townhouse complex, if we're to use today's language, just for one family. So those people were not poor, right? When you read J.J. Class, Dr. J.J. Class on the frontier wars, the wars of dispossession, when he talks about the Xhosa people and their cattle, a man who had no cattle would be looking at a head of 500 cattle. That one was a little bit short. Now, so we must understand that the poverty that exists in the first place is not in our nature.
Okay, thank you for that.
Right? So the poverty that you see today is not really what our natural state is. It was an imposed poverty. Definitely. So the 1913 Land Act and other land acts that were imposed had to be aggressively implemented to pauperize the African people. So when you talk about the grooming and the schooling into poverty, it was physical dispossession.
Definitely.
To strip us into a place of total hopelessness and uselessness. The comrades did not take over with a decolonial mentality to return us to the original position we were in before the dispossession actually happened. They themselves showed us that you can loot your way into a Bentley. Not that if Bentleys were there in the 1800s, our people, it would have been a normal car in Mbondoland, for example. It would have been commonplace if you look at the wealth that our people had at the time. So there is a need to actually put forward decolonial economics as opposed to the current kleptocracy, which you will discover that there's a lot of Western companies, starting with the arms deal, British Aerospace, Thales of Italy, who came to groom the comrades further into criminality. KPMG, Bain, McKinsey, EOH, and many others, big white companies, and white business leaders, grooming the comrades into eating things they know nothing about.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear them talking about champagnes that they know nothing about and all sorts of things. So this is schooled. They are groomed into it. Then our youngsters are learning this. They are not learning what Faku was doing, how Cetshwayo was running, how Mushweshwe was doing it, how Sekukune was doing it, how those guys were so independent and equal. By the way, in the same book, that Faku book by Stapleton, he says, when the king was there, his homestead, you could not distinguish it from the others. It was equality.
Equality.
Right? So they were all wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
Even his dress, you could not distinguish the way he dressed and looks. So now people, a guy, Blade in Zimande is driving a 7 Series BMW. For what?
Mm-hmm.
For what? What are these guys doing? What is this for? So this is the nonsense that is actually contrary to our culture, contrary to our identity, whereby when we are elected to represent us, you then don't represent us. You are not like us anymore. And we must know that you are not like us anymore. You don't eat the same food. You don't dress the same clothes. Your children don't go to the same schools. You are a different species, but you are representing us. And this is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And these settler colonialists, European settler colonialists, and their boss, Donald J. Trump, in the US, are actually fostering this culture that
Indeed.
you call consumerism and so on. The Americans die younger than any other developed country at any educational level and at any income level because of this consumerism culture. They eat all the wrong things. They drink the wrong tablets. They have the wrong habits, right? They wear sneakers for 5 days and they throw it away. They are not making anything. And it's causing them economic disaster. And our comrades in South Africa are on the same trajectory, taking us. If you don't have a Gucci, you don't have a Louis Vuitton, you are nobody.
Mm-hmm.
This is the problem. And this is the problem that is causing political killings.
Indeed.
This is the problem that is causing uncontrolled, irregular, and fruitless expenditure. This is the same one that is causing unauthorized, uncontrolled, and wild unauthorized expenditure in South Africa in the public sector, ably assisted by white monopoly capital in South Africa, consistently assisted and facilitated.
Thank you very much for that. And I appreciate, perhaps I do appreciate you being able to create an ideological trace of the current problem that we have of conspicuous consumption and consumerism and kleptocracy. And can you state for us that the current ways in which the nation state exists, in fact, the roots of the nation states that we inherited as Africa, post in each independence, that was never meant to be the kind of state that serves a majority, that serves people, that it was created as an extractive mechanism, as a mechanism to maintain inequality and to maintain power for a minority. We are just now seeing that the minority right now has become a black elite minority at that time. So there was not and has not been an ideological shift, as you mentioned, a decolonial ideological shift within our democracy, within our political circles, that allows for proper structures, proper infrastructure, proper state that caters to everybody, and the things that perhaps we have said to be fighting for: expropriation of land, equal access to education, equal access to services, and that as long as the nation state exists in that form, without an ideological shift, we are still going to be battling a compromised SAPS, a compromised judiciary, a compromised political system, a compromised everything, a compromised public health system.
Absolutely. The system of governance, which in our case, a bigger part of our history comes from the British.
Mm-hmm.
the system of governance of the British is actually a system of inequality. In other words, the exclusion.
A very hierarchical class.
It's a very hierarchical society. So a friend, he's unfortunately now late, a white friend of mine of Scottish origin, but his family had settled here. He went in the late 60s to study at Oxford. And he says, Sandile, it was a nightmare. The apartheid between the British who had come to Oxford on merit versus those who came through aristocracy, the royal families and all that, who these ones considered them to be upper class and these ones lower class. He says the viciousness of the apartheid was worse than anything I'd seen in South Africa. White on white discrimination, negative discrimination. Some of the people don't even know that in the USA, the concept of poor white trash was actually invented by white people, discriminating against each other. So their philosophy of life, a lot of them who are deriving their identity from the Anglo-Saxon world, is actually inequality, it's hierarchical. And unfortunately, for the African, you get put at the bottom of that hierarchy, even lower than the poor white trash. Yeah. And poor white trash was not invented by black people.
No, it was.
It was invented by
the hierarchy for themselves, even of whiteness itself.
Even whiteness itself.
Yeah, there's the Irish and the Italians even below, even the Jewish even below.
Exactly, yeah. So if you Google today the land question in Scotland, right, you'll probably find the land question in Ireland. So there's literature. So I'm coming to a point. The point being that the so-called free British people today, they are sandwiched into apartments that are smaller than my daughter's bedroom. That's why some of these comrades who lived in England come back here. They say they give you a property. When you stretch your arms, if you're a tall guy like me, when you stretch your arms this way, you touch both walls at the same time. I can't even run in those yards in Soweto. In my grandfather's yard, I could run and run out of air before I finished the yard. So this smallness, so the whole idea of this nation state, their philosophy, is to create a very small African who is packed like sardines in RDP houses, in some flats, somewhere in Hillbrow, in congested ghettos. Congested and confined financially and economically, spatially, and so on. So when you look at the Berlin Conference that then decided all these boundaries and said these are nations, you find Swazis in South Africa, Swazis in Swaziland, Basotho in South Africa. Basotho, I was hearing today, somebody says he wants to remove some cabinet members because they are South Africans in Lesotho. These Basothos are not proper Basothos, they are South Africans. So you have this whole nonsense that is going on. So, to your point, we need a new paradigm. We need a fresh way of thinking that says, how would we think if we were not confined by the textbooks of the British and the Americans? If we're thinking freely for a moment, you forget everything that Thatcher taught you, everything that Reagan taught you, everything Verwoerd taught you. You are just Sandile Swana on your own, and you generate endogenous thinking, independent African thought for the first time. How would you design South Africa? How would you design Africa? Without the influence of Leopold, Bismarck, and all these guys who sat there in order to make us smaller and smaller and beasts of burden for their prosperity. Thabo Mbeki doesn't have that in his mind. Zuma doesn't have it in his mind. That decolonial, otherwise it would already be manifesting. It would be here.
We would have seen a different state,
Our languages, I'm talking to you. You are an African, probably born in Africa, grew up in Africa, and I'm talking to you in English. We can't conduct, I've never It's rare for me to speak in the Xhosa language in any interview, on any media house, even at the EFF's offices.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Definitely very much. And I think that was very important, I think, because what we are looking at, I think, in terms of what we are dealing with General Mkhwanazi, the ad hoc committee, Madlanga Commission, policing, our judicial system, is simply a microcosm of a larger issue at hand, a larger issue and a larger thing about issues around our actual state and the way it exists. And the kind of interventions that are necessary for us to ever reach a space of freedom. Right now, we're just talking about safety. Right now, we're just talking about an ad hoc committee that is saying, how do we create a policing system that is safe? And yet we cannot even begin to think about that if we're saying that the whole entire system is created so that, and is not created for our safety at all and has never been. So it is actually incredible to think that we can deal with this now. We can have reports. We can have the results of this. But next year, we're going to go to the local government elections and it's going to be like, who to vote for? And is this vote going to make a difference? And I like that you've already advised our viewers, vote differently. I want to speak about, I think maybe more practically, just going back to a suggestion that was made by Mkhwanazi during the conversation within Parliament about the devolution of policing powers to provinces and municipalities to resolve the challenges currently faced by law enforcement. On a practical level moving forward, is this something that can be a possibility that can shift perhaps the issues that we're facing?
No, what must change is the philosophy.
Yeah.
The way we approach life, the way we see ourselves, how we identify ourselves, who we are. I come from Maldersdrift in Krugersdorp, in Mogale City. We were running a very successful CPF, Community Policing Forum, under SAPS there, achieving a reduction in crime rate and so on in terms of the law, because what you must achieve is stated in the law. And the ANC comrades came, and I did warn them because I was a comrade myself before 1994. I know what goes on. To say this CPF is white supremacist, it's racist, it's this, that, and the other. And they want to now take it over and make sure that it represents the people. This is now at a local level. I'm answering Mkhwanazi's suggestion. They went to the station commander as councillors to discuss this. The station commander agreed with them. Now, let me tell you, our CPF had 3 sectors. In my sector, there were 3 members of the sector committee. Were African, I was one of them, and the chairman of my sector, and 2 white ladies. And that is the form of a white supremacist representation of the CPF. They called meetings and bussed in people to come and vote for them. After that, we had no CPF for about 4 years. They collapsed it. Recently, ESCOM, we've been trying since 2016 to get ESCOM to protect the infrastructure in our area. And they started this year. When they started, the people who were objecting to the operations of ESCOM were members of the DA, indirectly, quote unquote, indirectly, white people, let's put it like that. At the end of the day, the people who had conducted illegal connections, the ringleader was a white person. The court case is going on now. So you must be very careful of thinking that the infiltration, if you devolve to a local level, from practical experience, it's worse, actually. So there are people who combine their economic lives, their business life, the way they make money, with politics.
Yes.
And then they enter politics in order to be protected from the consequences of their criminal activities, which generate them income. That is the problem. So when you devolve, then you are just devolving it to local criminal syndicates, who some of them are actually councillors. Councillors are part of the criminal syndicates. Yeah, a lot. Magaqa was killed at a local level.
At a local level, indeed. Indeed. So that's, wow. The infiltration goes to the most basic places that policing powers are inefficient up to that level. And I think, it reflects, I think, what a lot of people have spoken about, even going to a local police station and opening a case and a docket disappearing, and that just the lack of proper policing has devolved incredibly to the lowest of the low. What are our practical solutions going forward around, is it possible to ever create a police force that is not politicized and that is not captured? Is it possible?
Well, I was in Singapore and I was staying at the hotel, and the butler, met the butler, head butler at the foyer there, a very friendly chap. And he says, here in Singapore, we don't have crime.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we have crime in Singapore? It's because all the animals are in the zoo and the people are free. So before the plane lands, they will tell you something to the effect that if you are found with any amount of drugs on you, it will carry a life sentence. Before the plane lands, a 7-year, 8-year-old girl can walk at 3 a.m. in Singapore and nobody's going to rape her or molest her, because the police know that their job is to protect life, limb, and property, not to be involved in political factions or in criminal activities. And any senior person who involves himself or herself in politics, in crime, corruption, there are severe penalties all the time, everywhere. So it is possible. Who would have known, these things that are possible? Who would have known that sprinting world champions would come from Botswana as we speak today?
Yes, indeed.
Right? So we can have a police force that is world leading in its professionalism. We can have anything. We can have world leading universities. We can have world leading doctors and hospitals, public schools that are world leading. So the problem is that some of these guys were at school with them. Some of them are our age, some of us, who are leading this country. We know them, some of them. They were useless then. They are useless now. And unfortunately, we've allowed them to take positions they should not have taken. And they now need to be removed. That is all that needs to be done.
That needs to be done.
So if you're asking about what is the practical step, the practical step has got two components. We need to learn the original beliefs of our ancestors and live by those values. 2, don't vote for a tsotsi or a party that has got a lot of tsotsis in it. Don't vote for them. Vote for another one. Those 2 steps are practical.
Okay. Just to round up, thank you very much for that. Just to round up, let's go to this belief system, our traditional ancestral belief systems. What are the elements that we need to remember, that you would like us to remember, perhaps remind us, and how perhaps direct us towards how we can ourselves and the viewers at home to begin to recollect them for ourselves, for the people who are eager and who are keen to see a different kind of country in Africa?
So the first development institution is the home, the family, right? So when the invading forces of the British and all that defeated King Cetshwayo in the Battle of Ulundi. People talk a lot about the Battle of Isandla, and they don't talk about the Battle of Ulundi. Cetshwayo was defeated in a battle that he never wanted to fight. He didn't want. He beat the British in Isandla, and he didn't want to fight them again. But they insisted because they wanted revenge. So they beat him there. And so the Zulus lost their military might and their political power from that battle. What troubled the white people, the invading white people, was that they were economically irrelevant to the Zulus. The Zulu homestead was economically independent. The Zulus were not coming to the white people to ask for work. And they wanted those Zulus, the physical Zulu, to come and work here for me. Right? That's what the white people wanted. So up until 1900, the Zulus were not coming because the home was a place of production. You learn all your skills, your production, everything goes on there. So a person was called a Mnumzane, a head of a family, never wanted to leave home.
No.
Because the business, the commercial wealth was being created at home.
Within the home.
Within the home. A lot of it, by the way. So the cattle, the fields, the
and everyone found their role and their
in that
place
system,
within that system.
Right?
Yeah.
So we must understand that all the elements of human development must be present in the home and then present in the community and present in the nation. These are systems of human development. So the thing that must be developed is the human. Ubuntu. You develop the human in terms of skills, economics, values, and so on. Another writer, an American writer, writing about the introduction of Christianity in KZN, he says, you see here, when you look at the morality of the Zulus, if I were to leave women and make sure that they are safe, they are not raped or anything, I would leave them with the Zulus than with these white settlers. The morals of these Zulus, that is why I objected to Jacob Zuma in the part of what he was saying about being 100% Zulu and also being implicated in rape.
In rape, no, that's those. Yeah.
It's not part of what is in the written record that you can be a Zulu and rape again.
No.
You can't be 100% Zulu, certainly not.
And be a rapist.
And be a rapist at the same time. It's not possible. So you will see that everything, we were self-sufficient. So the philosophy was self-sufficient. Your education, you get it from your own people. So the teachings of Professor Kwesipra, that you need to actually focus on your culture. Your number one force of development, your unique instrument of development is your culture and your language. There is no nation that can build greatness in a foreign language. Your development is in your home language and in your culture. Your modes of thinking. For instance, I'm Mpondo. My mode, even though I am speaking in English, my mode and idiom of thinking is Mpondo. Right? And Einstein said this thing, that before anyone, whether you are a physicist, a mathematician, or a communist, a French communist is first thinking like a Frenchman before he thinks like a communist. That is why the Citroën car from France looks different from a VW, totally different. If you look at French cars and Italian cars, they look different from German and French and American cars, because your culture, even in design, in conceptualization, dictates that. But now if you are trying to be a miniature Englishman, trying to be a miniature English lady, an imitation, a fake European, you are not going to progress. So to me, that is what we need to be schooling each other on. So that is why when I buy literature for my own children and grandchildren, I buy literature from my own people and their thoughts and the challenges here and in the diaspora. And also classics, Russian classics,
yes,
Scandinavian classics, from other countries and other regions. Not to think that you are fully schooled when you study Shakespeare.
Thank you for that. Let us go back to our culture. Let us go back to Ubuntu, and let us remember who we were before we were told who we were. I like that. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. You've heard from our analyst here today, and we look forward to seeing more of what happens in the news in relation to the ad hoc committee and the Madlanga Commission, and we'll keep you updated on that.